Welcome to your daily news roundup. We've got a little bit of everything today, from international affairs to human interest stories, plus some pretty big questions about the future.
A real mix, yeah.
We'll be touching on US-China relations, the situations in Ukraine and Gaza, and even some legal battles in France.
Sounds like we've got a lot to cover.
We do. And we'll also look at stories of humanity pushing boundaries in space and grappling with climate change. So, yeah, lots to dive into.
Let's get started then.
Okay, let's start with the passing of former President Jimmy Carter. He died at the age of 100, and, Carter was deeply connected to China.
Right.
In fact, his birthday, October 1st, coincided with the founding of the People's Republic of China. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's kind of a strange coincidence, and Chinese social media actually dubbed him Myron Zong, meaning benevolent American.
It really shows the impact he had. And, Carter played a crucial role in normalizing those U.S.-China relations back in 1979.
Yeah, he formally established diplomatic ties.
He welcomed Deng Xiaoping, the architect of China's economic transformation, to the U.S.
I remember seeing photos of that visit.
Me too. Especially that symbolic handshake between Carter and Deng. It represented a new era of cooperation, or so we thought.
Things have definitely changed. Just look at the suspected Chinese hack of the US Treasury Department. US officials are calling it a major incident.
They're saying that a China-based advanced persistent threat actor got access to employee workstations.
And potentially some sensitive documents, too.
What exactly does advanced persistent threat even mean?
Well, they're highly sophisticated state-sponsored groups. They use stealthy and continuous tactics to get into networks and steal data.
So basically really good hackers.
Yeah, pretty much. And they're hard to detect. They can stay hidden for a long time, making them a huge cybersecurity threat.
That's worrying. And of course, China denies any involvement.
Of course.
But this has definitely added to the tension between the U.S. and China.
Some experts are even saying it's like a new Cold War, something Carter himself is afraid of.
It makes you wonder if his vision of the two nations working together is slipping away.
Yeah, it's a real concern.
Speaking of difficult situations, let's shift gears to the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. Both are having such a devastating impact on civilians.
Absolutely. In Gaza, it's just heartbreaking. Baby Silas' story, the 20-day-old who died from hypothermia in a displacement camp, it really highlights how dire the situation is.
It's hard to believe that 6 newborns died from the same cause in just 2 weeks.
The conditions are just desperate. Those displacement camps are so overcrowded and they lack basic infrastructure.
And the constant fear of Israeli military strikes doesn't help.
Right, it adds another layer of trauma. And while Sila's death wasn't directly from a bombing, it was a consequence of the war, the conditions the war created.
It's a terrible situation. What's being done to help those families?
Well, organizations like UNICEF are calling on Israel to ease restrictions on aid deliveries. They're saying these deaths are preventable.
It's a reminder of the human cost of war. Now, in Ukraine, there have been some small signs of hope with a recent prisoner exchange.
Yeah, the BBC captured some really emotional reunions. One former prisoner, Anatoly, he was captured in Mariupol. He was so grateful to be free and vowed to continue supporting his country.
It's amazing to see that kind of resilience.
The BBC also spoke with the Black Pack, a Ukrainian mortar unit. They're fighting near Kharkov. It's a really diverse group, a vegan chef, an artist, a web developer.
Yeah, fighting for the same cause.
Exactly. But even within the group, there's this weariness, They have different views on peace talks. Some think this could go on for another decade.
Oh, wow.
While others are more open to a ceasefire, they see the toll it's taking.
So much uncertainty. What about the civilians caught in the middle of all this?
Well, the BBC spoke with people in Dnipro. That city gets targeted a lot by Russian attacks.
I can't imagine living with that fear.
They're living with constant air raid sirens and trying to maintain some kind of normalcy. One resident, Ludmila, said, "We're getting some help, but it's not enough. That's why we have to sit down and negotiate."
It's a powerful message.
And even displaced elderly women, the ones in shelters, they've seen horrific things, but they're still advocating for a negotiated peace.
That really says something. It seems like everyone just wants the violence to end.
Definitely. That desire for a better future, it's universal.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to a different kind of conflict. The legal battle in France, the Giselle Pellicot case.
That one was shocking. She was drugged and raped by her husband, Dominique Pellicot, and he involved dozens of men over a decade.
It's horrific, and she bravely waived her anonymity to help other victims.
It's amazing that she had the strength to do that.
And Pellico actually filmed a lot of the abuse, which helped identify and arrest many of those involved.
So what happened?
Well, he got a 20-year sentence, and 47 men were convicted of rape. But 17 of them have filed appeals. They're claiming manipulation and saying they didn't know Giselle wasn't consenting.
It raises so many questions about responsibility and consent.
It does. It's a very complicated case.
Now, for a different kind of closure, let's talk about Bernie Madoff.
So
The final payouts are being made to the victims of his Ponzi scheme.
that's right. The Madoff Victim Fund has recovered $4.3 billion, which is being distributed to over 40,000 people.
It won't erase the damage, but at least it offers some financial relief.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's shift gears to something a bit more positive. Humanity pushing boundaries. India just had a successful first space docking mission.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. They launched 2 satellites designed to connect in orbit.
And docking is essential for things like manned missions to the moon, right?
Exactly. And India wants to send a person to the moon by 2040. This mission puts them on track for that.
It's an exciting time for space exploration.
It is. But there's this debate about the role of humans in space. Some scientists think robots and AI will eventually replace human astronauts.
I can see why. It's expensive and risky to send humans into space.
Right. And robots can handle the dangers of radiation and the effects of space travel much better.
But isn't there something special about human exploration? Pushing our own limits.
There is. Astronauts talk about the importance of human intuition and adaptability, things robots can't replicate.
And what about the inspiration factor? Seeing people in space can be so motivating.
Absolutely. And then there's the role of advanced AI and robots like NASA's Valkyrie and Robonaut.
Valkyrie, that 6-foot-tall humanoid robot, sounds like science fiction.
It does. And Robonaut, which was sent to the International Space Station to help astronauts, shows how far robotics has come.
So are we headed towards a future where humans and robots work together in space?
It seems likely. Human curiosity is powerful, but we can't deny the advantages of robotic help in such harsh environments.
Maybe we'll see humans merging with robotics to adapt to space, like some experts suggest.
It's a fascinating possibility.
It really is. Now let's turn to another challenge. Climate change. Today, we're focusing on the impact of storms on Barbados.
We'll hear the story of Charles Carter, a fisherman who lost his boat and livelihood to Hurricane Beryl.
It's a reminder that climate change is affecting real people's lives right now.
And Barbados is facing rising sea levels, coral bleaching, and coastal erosion all at once.
It's a lot for one island to handle. What's a long-term outlook?
It's a serious situation. The BBC spoke with young people in Barbados, and they're very aware of the crisis.
What are they saying?
There's a mix of pessimism and hope. Some worry about the lack of global action,
It's understandable.
while others are optimistic about finding solutions through collaboration and innovation.
It's good to see the younger generation demanding action. It is their future at stake. But amidst the challenges, there are stories of resilience, like Stephen Bourne.
Yeah, he's a fisherman who lost 2 boats to Hurricane Beryl, but he's determined to stay on his island. He calls it his rock.
That's powerful.
It shows the human spirit's ability to persevere, even in the face of adversity.
It's definitely inspiring. Now let's move on to another area affected by climate change, Kenya.
Kenya's coffee industry is facing a crisis. Unpredictable weather, like cold temperatures and erratic rainfall, is devastating crops.
We hear about climate change in coffee, but what does it actually mean for the farmers?
It's a matter of survival for them. Lower yields mean lower incomes. Many earn as little as $2 a day.
That's incredibly difficult. And how does this affect the environment?
The changing climate is putting a strain on water resources. Farmers have to rely more on river water, which depletes the supply. It's a vicious cycle.
It's all connected. Climate change, economic inequality, access to resources.
It shows the urgency of finding solutions that protect both the environment and the people who depend on it.
It's a lot to think about. Now, before we move on, let's talk about a Guantanamo Bay detainee, Rida bin Salah al-Yazidi.
He was held there without charges since 2002. He's finally been sent back to Tunisia.
Guantanamo has been so controversial. What does this repatriation mean?
It's a big step, but it raises questions about the future of Guantanamo. 26 detainees are still there.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Definitely. And it reminds us of the legacy of the war on terror and the struggle to balance security with human rights.
Okay, let's take a short break. We'll be back with a few more stories that caught our eye. Welcome back to the Roundup. Let's talk about the U.S. healthcare system, specifically the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
It's been all over the news. People are really upset, seeing it as a symptom of a broken system.
Yeah, there's so much anger directed at the health insurance industry. People are sharing stories, denied claims, crazy costs.
I get it. Healthcare in the US is so complex, so expensive.
People are overwhelmed, they feel let down, and this case has brought all that to the surface. Experts are pointing out that the U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other developed country.
But we don't have the best outcomes, right?
Exactly. Our life expectancy, infant mortality rates, they lag behind. It's a tough situation. What do you think is at the root of all this?
Well, one thing is the rise of prior authorization. Insurance companies want pre-approval for procedures.
So more bureaucracy.
Yeah, leading to delays, denials. People feel like they're being denied care they need.
What a nightmare. Is anyone trying to fix this?
There have been attempts in Congress, to streamline things, make it more transparent, but it's slow going.
And with Trump back in office.
Exactly. He says he'll protect Medicare, but he also loves deregulation, privatization.
Which could make things worse.
Potentially. It's a complicated issue with huge implications. This case has definitely put the spotlight on healthcare reform.
For sure. Now, from a healthcare crisis to the threat of cyber warfare, what's going on with the U.S. and China in cyberspace?
Well, that suspected Chinese hack of the Treasury Department, that's just one part of it. Both countries are engaging in cyberattacks, espionage.
It feels like we're heading for a digital conflict. What could happen?
The consequences could be huge. Cyberattacks can take down critical infrastructure, disrupt finances, even interfere with elections.
That's scary.
It's a serious threat. We need global cooperation, some kind of rules to prevent things from escalating.
It's a high-stakes game.
Ah,
Now, let's move on to South Korea. There's political turmoil there. An arrest warrant for the suspended president, Yoon Suk-yeol.
he's accused of abusing power, inciting an insurrection after declaring martial law.
Wow.
He's facing impeachment and refusing to cooperate with investigators.
What happens next?
It's really unpredictable. The situation is tense. Yoon and his opponents are both fighting for control.
Sounds like things could get worse.
There's a real risk of unrest. It's a reminder that even in democracies, things can be fragile.
True. Now, from South Korea, let's go back to Kenya. We talked about climate change affecting their coffee industry, but there's more to the story, right?
Yeah, Kenyan farmers are dealing with unpredictable weather, but they're also struggling with the global trade system. It puts them at a disadvantage.
House.
It's complicated supply chains, market speculation, farmers lacking bargaining power. Coffee's expensive in our cafes, but the people who grow it, they barely earn anything.
They're stuck in a system that doesn't benefit them.
Many feel that way. They see corporations, middlemen profiting while they struggle.
It's a stark example of global inequality.
It highlights the need for fairer trade, ensuring profits are distributed more equitably. Kenya is a case study in how climate change, inequality, and trade policies can combine to hurt vulnerable communities.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up this section, let's touch on the Guantanamo Bay detainee, Rida bin Salah al-Yazidi.
He was held there without charges since 2002. Now he's been sent back to Tunisia.
Guantanamo has been so controversial.
It has. This repatriation is a big deal, but it also raises questions about the future of Guantanamo. There are still 26 detainees there.
It's a tough issue, balancing national security with human rights.
Absolutely.
And we're back with the last part of our news roundup. We'll start with some sad news from the entertainment world. British singer Liam Payne has died.
Yeah, the former One Direction star, only 31 years old.
He was found in his hotel room in Buenos Aires.
Early reports point to a possible overdose. The toxicology reports showed traces of alcohol, cocaine, and antidepressants. Seems like he was battling addiction.
It's just heartbreaking for his fans and everyone who knew him, a real reminder of the devastating impact of addiction.
A lot of tributes have been pouring in from other musicians remembering his talent and energy.
Now, for our final story, let's shift gears a bit. It's about a snack that's caused quite a stir in India. Caramel popcorn.
It sounds a little strange, I know, but it's become a big debate about taxes. The Indian government decided to categorize caramel popcorn as a sugar confectionery.
So a higher tax rate than regular popcorn.
Exactly, and it's caused all sorts of reactions. Some people find it funny, others are outraged, some are just confused.
I guess you wouldn't think popcorn would be such a big deal.
Right, but some see it as government overreach, while others think it's a good way to address concerns about sugar. It's interesting how something so seemingly small can reveal deeper societal issues.
And with that, we've come to the end of today's news roundup. We've covered a lot, from international conflicts to political struggles, legal battles, space exploration, climate change, and even the great caramel popcorn debate.
What a mix. It really shows how interconnected our world is.
Absolutely. We've seen the heartbreaking loss of a young talent and the resilience of communities facing incredible challenges. Today's news has really highlighted both the fragility and strength of humanity.
Well said.
We hope you found this roundup informative. As we enter a new year, we're left with a lot to think about: the challenges, the opportunities, and the importance of human connection.
Thanks for joining us.
We wish you a safe and hopeful new year.